Writing. The rain had turned the city streets into rivers when Elena noticed the man standing alone beneath the broken awning of an old restaurant. He was dressed in a black suit, completely out of place among the crowded sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Two black cars were parked nearby, and several serious-looking men stood around them. Elena knew she should keep walking. But hunger had been following her for 3 days. Her small purse contained only a few coins. Her landlord had already warned her that she would have to leave her tiny apartment if she couldn't pay the rent. Her little sister needed medicine, and Elena had no idea where the next meal would come from. Then she saw the man's wallet. It was visible in the pocket of his coat. Elena hesitated. She had never stolen anything in her life. But desperation has a way of making good people consider choices they never imagined making. She moved closer. Her fingers slipped into his coat pocket. The wallet came free. Elena turned and ran. She didn't look back. The man under the awning suddenly touched his pocket. His wallet was gone. One of his bodyguards stepped forward. "Sir, should we?" The man raised his hand. "No." His voice was calm. He looked down the street where Elena had disappeared. For some strange reason, he wasn't angry. He was confused. The moment Elena had touched him, something inside him had felt strangely familiar. The man's name was Adrian Vale. To the public, he was a wealthy businessman who owned shipping companies, hotels, and private security firms. But behind closed doors, people whispered another name. The Black Wolf. Adrian was feared throughout the city because of his powerful criminal organization. Yet there was one secret nobody knew. Years earlier, Adrian had been married. And his wife had disappeared. Her name was Elena. He had searched for her for years. But he had never found her. That night, Adrian had no idea that the woman who had stolen his wallet was the same woman he had spent years trying to find. Elena reached her apartment and locked the door behind her. Her hands were shaking. She opened the wallet. Inside were several credit cards, identification documents, and an old photograph. She froze. The photograph showed a young man standing beside a young woman. The woman was her. Elena dropped the wallet. She stared at the photograph in disbelief. That can't be me. Her memories had always been broken. 3 years earlier, Elena had survived a terrible accident. She had suffered a serious head injury and lost large pieces of her memory. She remembered her childhood. She remembered her sister. She remembered the city. But she couldn't remember the years immediately before the accident. Doctors had told her that some memories might return naturally. Others might never return. Elena picked up the photograph again. The young man beside her looked exactly like the man she had just robbed. Her heart began racing. On the back of the photograph were 4 words. Forever, no matter what. Elena sat on the floor. Who are you? She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, there was a knock at her door. Elena's blood ran cold. She looked through the window. 3 black cars were parked outside. Several men stood on the sidewalk. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Miss Elena?" She opened the door slightly. Adrian stood outside. He looked at her for several seconds. His expression changed. Not anger. Shock. "Elena?" She stepped backward. "How do you know my name?" Adrian stared at her as though the entire world had stopped. You really don't remember me? Elena shook her head. No. Adrian looked at the wallet in her hand. Then at the photograph. You stole my wallet. I know. You opened it. Yes. And you saw the photograph. Elena nodded. Adrian took a slow breath. That photograph was taken on our wedding day. Elena's knees nearly gave way. Our what? Our wedding. The room became silent. Elena looked at the photograph again. Suddenly, a tiny flash appeared in her mind. A white dress. Music. A ring. Someone holding her hand. Then darkness. She grabbed the edge of the table. Adrian immediately stepped forward but stopped himself. Are you all right? I don't know. Adrian's voice softened. You're my wife. Elena stared at him. The poor woman who had stolen a wallet to buy medicine had just discovered that she was the forgotten wife of one of the city's most powerful men. But Adrian wasn't finished. There is something else you need to know. Elena looked at him. Before you disappeared, someone tried to kill you. She felt a chill. What? You were investigating something you weren't supposed to discover. Adrian's face became serious. And the accident that took your memory may not have been an accident. Elena's fingers tightened around the photograph. What happened to me? Adrian looked toward the window. I spent 3 years searching for that answer. He paused. Now that I've found you, I intend to finish the search. The days that followed were confusing for Elena. Adrian moved her to a secure residence, but he never forced her to stay. He arranged for doctors to examine her and specialists to help recover her memories. Most importantly, he gave her space. Elena expected the feared Mafia boss to be cruel. Instead, she saw a man who quietly remembered everything about her. He remembered that she hated thunderstorms. He knew she couldn't sleep without a small lamp beside her bed. He knew she loved jasmine tea. He remembered her favorite childhood song. Every detail made Elena wonder how someone she couldn't remember could remember her so perfectly. One evening, Adrian placed a small wooden box on the table. Elena opened it. Inside was a wedding ring. Her hands began trembling. You kept this? Every day. Why? Because I never believed you were gone forever. Elena looked at him. Did you love me? Adrian smiled sadly. I still do. She looked away. I don't know how to feel about that. You don't have to know. He stood. You don't owe me your memories. And you don't owe me your love just because we were married. Elena looked at him with surprise. For the first time, she saw beyond the rumors surrounding Adrian Vale. There was a wounded man standing in front of her. A man who had spent years waiting for someone who couldn't remember him. Meanwhile, danger was getting closer. Someone inside Adrian's organization discovered that Elena had returned. That person was Victor, Adrian's most trusted advisor. Victor had been with Adrian for years. He had helped manage the organization and knew every secret. But Victor had one secret of his own. He had been involved in the events surrounding Elena's disappearance. 3 years earlier, Elena had discovered financial records proving that Victor was secretly stealing money from Adrian's companies. She had planned to tell Adrian. Before she could, Victor arranged for her car to be forced off the road. He believed Elena had died. But when he learned she was alive, panic consumed him. He couldn't allow her memories to return. One night, Elena woke from a nightmare. She saw a road. Rain. Headlights. A black car behind her. Then she heard someone shouting. "Don't let her reach Adrian." Elena woke screaming. Adrian rushed into the room. "What happened?" She grabbed his arm. "I remembered something." Adrian sat beside her. "What?" "Someone was chasing me." "Who?" "I don't know." Then she remembered another detail. A silver ring. Adrian's expression changed. "What kind of ring?" "A black stone surrounded by silver." Adrian immediately knew. Victor wore one. The next morning, Adrian quietly ordered an investigation. Security footage was reviewed. Old financial records were reopened. Phone records were examined. And finally, they found something. 3 years earlier, Victor had made a large payment to a private driver. The payment had been made the day before Elena's accident. Adrian stared at the evidence. His face became cold. He had trusted Victor like a brother. Now he realized that the person closest to him had betrayed him. But Adrian didn't tell Elena. He didn't want her frightened. Instead, he arranged for her to stay in a safe location. Victor soon realized that Adrian knew. He disappeared. Then Elena received a message. "Come to the old railway station if you want the truth." She recognized the number. It belonged to Victor. She knew Adrian would tell her not to go. But she was tired of living inside a mystery. She went. The abandoned station was almost empty. Victor stood beneath a broken light. "You remember me now," he said. Elena stared at him. "You tried to kill me." Victor laughed bitterly. "You were never supposed to survive." Elena stepped backward. "Why?" "Because you found the records." "What records?" "The ones proving I had been stealing from Adrian." Elena's mind flashed again. She remembered sitting at a desk. Documents spread before her. She remembered calling Adrian. She remembered saying, "I know who is betraying you." Then Victor appeared. Everything became clear. "You attacked me because I was going to tell Adrian." Victor's expression hardened. "Yes." A sound came from behind him. Adrian stepped into the station. "You should have told me yourself." Victor turned. Adrian's security team surrounded the building. Victor looked trapped. "You took everything from me," Victor shouted. "No," Adrian replied. "You did that yourself." The authorities had already been contacted. Victor was arrested and taken away to face charges. For Elena, the truth was finally out. But her memories didn't return all at once. They came slowly. A smile. A conversation. A rainy afternoon. A wedding. And eventually, the moment that mattered most. She remembered Adrian standing beside her on their wedding day. She remembered holding his hand. She remembered telling him, "Whatever happens, I'll never leave you." Elena cried when the memory returned. Adrian found her sitting in the garden. She looked up. "I remember." He stopped. "You remember?" She nodded. "I remember our wedding." Adrian's eyes filled with emotion. "I remember telling you I would wait for you." Elena smiled through her tears. "You did." He sat beside her. "I also remember something else." "What?" "You were always terrible at keeping secrets." Elena laughed. and apparently terrible at stealing wallets. For the first time in years, Adrian laughed too. The woman who had once stolen his wallet because she was desperate for food was sitting beside him again. Not because of his money. Not because of his power. But because, slowly, she had found her way back to the man she had once loved. Months later, Elena returned to her old neighborhood. She remembered how poor she had been. She remembered the nights she had gone hungry. She remembered the tiny apartment where she had cried after losing her memories. Adrian stood beside her. "You could leave all of this behind," he said. Elena shook her head. "I don't want to forget where I came from." Together, they started a foundation that provided food, medicine, and temporary housing for struggling families. Elena became its director. She insisted on meeting the people who received help. She wanted every person to feel respected. One afternoon, a little girl approached Elena. "Are you rich?" Elena smiled. "Why do you ask?" "Because everyone says your husband is very rich." Elena looked toward Adrian, who was speaking with several volunteers. Then she smiled. "Money isn't what makes someone rich." The girl looked confused. "Then what does?" Elena knelt beside her. "Having someone who remembers you when the whole world has forgotten you." The girl smiled. Across the room, Adrian watched Elena. He had once believed that losing his wife was the greatest tragedy of his life. Then he discovered that she had survived. She had lost her memories. She had struggled. She had even stolen his wallet. But somehow, life had brought them back to each other. And Adrian realized something he would never forget. Sometimes people don't disappear because they stop loving you. Sometimes life simply takes them somewhere they never expected to go. And sometimes, even after years of darkness, love finds a way to lead them home. Elena had once stolen Adrian's wallet because she was desperate. But that small act of desperation had unknowingly returned something far more valuable to both of them. A lost past. A forgotten marriage. And a second chance. This time, they promised each other that no matter what happened, they would never let fear, wealth, or the cruelty of others separate them again. Writing. Adrian walked away from Elena's apartment, but he didn't go far. He stopped beside the black car and looked back at the building. For 3 years, he had imagined finding his wife in countless ways. Sometimes he imagined her walking through a crowded airport. Sometimes he imagined receiving a phone call telling him she was alive. Sometimes he imagined opening a door and seeing her standing there. But he had never imagined finding her because she had stolen his wallet. One of his guards approached. "Boss, should we bring her somewhere safe?" Adrian shook his head. "No. She may be in danger." "I know." "Then why leave her there?" Adrian looked toward the apartment. "Because she doesn't remember me." The guard became silent. Adrian continued, "If I force her to come with me, she'll be terrified. I won't make the same mistake twice." "What mistake?" Adrian looked away. Thinking that protecting someone means controlling their life. He remembered Elena before the accident. She had always hated being treated as weak. She was kind, stubborn, and fearless. If she wanted something, she fought for it. That was one of the reasons he had fallen in love with her. Inside the apartment, Elena couldn't stop thinking about his words. "You were my wife." She looked at the photograph again. The young woman in the picture was definitely her. But the happiness on her face confused her. She couldn't remember ever being that happy. She placed the photograph beside her bed and tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw fragments. A white dress. A garden. A silver ring. Adrian smiling. Her own voice saying something she couldn't quite hear. Then another image appeared. A dark car. Rain. Headlights behind her. A man shouting. Elena suddenly woke. She was breathing heavily. Someone had been chasing her. She was sure of it. The next morning, Adrian returned. This time, he came alone. Elena opened the door cautiously. Why are you here? I brought something. He handed her a small wooden box. Elena opened it. Inside was a wedding ring. She stared at it. That's mine. Adrian nodded. You gave it back to me the night before your accident. Why? I don't know. Elena looked at him. Was something wrong between us? Adrian shook his head. No. Then why did I give you the ring? I don't know. He paused. But you were afraid. Of what? Someone had been threatening you. Elena's expression changed. Who? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, do you remember anything about your work before the accident? She thought. I worked for a financial company. Adrian nodded. You were an accountant. Yes. You discovered something. What? Money was disappearing from several of my companies. Elena looked shocked. You mean someone was stealing from you? Yes. And I found out? You were very close to proving it. Elena's hand tightened around the wedding ring. Who was stealing? We don't know yet. But you suspect someone. Adrian looked at her. I suspect someone inside my organization. A silence filled the room. Elena finally said, then maybe that's why I was attacked. Yes. Adrian's voice was quiet. And whoever did it believed you were dead. Elena looked at the ring. Maybe losing my memory saved my life. Adrian's expression softened. Maybe. For the next several weeks, Elena stayed in her apartment while Adrian quietly arranged protection around her. He didn't force himself into her life. Instead, he visited occasionally. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes medicine for Sophia. Sometimes he simply sat across from Elena and answered her questions. She learned things about her old life. She and Adrian had met at a charity event. She had disliked him at first because he was too serious. He had tried to impress her with expensive gifts. She had refused every one. What did you finally give me? Elena asked one afternoon. Adrian smiled. A cup of cheap coffee. She laughed. That's what worked. You told me I was the first rich man you'd ever met who understood that coffee doesn't